in your heart, may you know the truth inside you from the start. May you find the strength to know you are a part of something beautiful. May the grace of God be with you always in your heart. May you know the truth inside you from the start. May you find the strength to know you are a part of something beautiful. May the grace of God be with you always in your heart. May you know the truth inside you from the start. May you find the strength to know you are a part of something beautiful. May the grace of God be with you always in your heart. May you know the truth inside you from the start. May you find the strength to know you are a part of something beautiful. And I thought that I saw.
Everybody, Coach Stefan Rudolph coming to you from recovercoaching.com out here in beautiful Huntington Beach. Just played some racquetball, some outdoor racquetball. Got my butt kicked out here. This is the 3-wall outdoor. I play indoor all the time, but sometimes like life, you gotta get your butt kicked to make a comeback. That's what I'm here for right now. And played with a buddy of mine. We've known each other about a year on Facebook and getting to know each other even better in sobriety and health and wellness, making your comeback in life. So would love to introduce the man here. My racquetball buddy Brian Pineda is here, and we connected about a year ago again on Facebook, on social media, and I wanted to introduce him. Brian, how you doing?
Oh man, I'm loving life. How you doing, Stefan?
Doing great. Loving it to be a part of this sobriety.
Oh my God.
The growth, and I loved your story. I saw it about a year ago on the channel, on Facebook there, and it really inspired me. So we have this racquetball in common, and just also a love for life and a love for sobriety. So the more you posted, the more I was inspired to inspire others. And have you here on the show. So tell us about your journey and what you've gone through and grown through.
Yeah, absolutely, Stefan. Thank you too. And you know, it's like, man, how do I really get centered here? It's so easy to put the ego in. There's so much you want to cram into a conversation because once you sit all the way down in this lifestyle, you know, this new way of life, like the next thing you want is everyone to get it. You know what I mean? It's almost like if you put your feet in the position of your family and friends who have desperately wanted this for you, like they could see the early signs, the ominous warnings that were coming, that this is who you are, but you paid like zero attention to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just what I was doing. You know, 33 relapses before I finally sit all the way down. You know what I mean? And not every relapse had a program of recovery. You know, a lot of it was self-propulsion, trying to do it myself. And what I've come to find out that an alcoholic like myself, who's try to quiet their disease with money, sex, drugs.
Yeah.
The most dangerous place they can be is by themselves. You know what I mean? I'm just constantly, me by myself, and me just using the same mind they get me in those same situations or same scenarios, that I have this idea that I'm going to believe that one day I'm going to successfully use drugs or alcohol it's a great obsession. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We read that. I can sit here and spit literature, but what my experience was is that, you know, for me, at the very end of it, what it was is I didn't think that a life without drinking or using was gonna be boring. That's what I thought it was gonna be. You know what I mean? That's what my best ideas get me. So like, no matter what happens, it could be, you know, I find myself at the trap house. I find myself hanging out with gangs. In California, 22 different states is where I take my addiction to, right? And I'm this guy that uses anything from owning businesses to playing professional racquetball, you know what I mean? Like people who are paying money for me to travel, and then here I am trying to be this guy that's happy-go-lucky, but really on the inside I'm dying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've never been okay. Like since a young child, I've never been okay to be me. You know what I mean? But like newsflash, everybody's already taken. Like there's only one person left for me to be, and that's myself. But there was something inside that wanted to be something so different than what my destiny was supposed to be.
I love that.
You know,
Finding out who you are, and a lot of it is covered up by alcohol. Same here, you know, drinking for so many years, you forget, you don't even know. You haven't even discovered yourself as an adult, especially, right? It was all involved with that one relationship that ties us together. It's alcohol, and it breaks apart all the other relationships too, right? Did you have a lot of problems, of course, with that, family, friends, losing people?
You know, it was like one of the most intimate things was I've always had good people. Like a friend of mine says, you know, I take hostages. I would have these relationships. I would take hostages, right? And it was so beautiful when he would describe it. That was like, oh my God, like really, that's what I'm doing. I could tell you I'm in a relationship. I you know, their friends would tell me like, you don't love her or you don't love him. Like, it would hurt.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like from my perspective, right, the same mind that's telling me that drinking and drugging is okay is telling me, like, you can't tell me I don't love this person.
I know.
When really, you give me enough alcohol, you give me enough drugs, and I will, without thinking, step over the love of my family, the love of my relationships, the love of my people in business and all that kind of stuff without hesitation.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally
doesn't
takes
matter
over.
what the consequence is.
Ego versus spirit, I call it. Ego wants the drugs, the alcohol, do this, do that, doesn't think about anything. Spirit and heart wants to love people. You do love people. You never stop loving them, but alcohol took over.
Right. And it's almost like, and it's not really fair to compare addiction to parenthood, right? Because, like, number one, there's no book on parenting or anything like that. You know what I mean? And like the closest thing I've ever become to a parent is with my fur children, right? My dogs that I've owned in my relationship and things like that. But like, you do the best you can. You know what I mean? And I think that's just all the requirement is like, for this journey as you get there, you're doing the best you can. Like, your journey, it doesn't just start the day you stop drinking and using drugs. Like, part of what helps you get in recovery is this life you have to go through.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's jails, prisons, institutions, 5150s.
Yeah, had one.
Right? You know what I mean? We rack
Yeah.
those up and all these things. Like, that's where your recovery begins, because that's where the experience is going to come from. Like, I don't know about you, but I can kind of point this at you. Like, part of the most revolutionary movement of this altruistic movement is that we come into the rooms or wherever your 12-step program of recovery is, and once you learn the lingo, like once you understand recovery and you relate it to your story, someone is going to come in that room and they're going to hear your language of love, and they're going to hear your program of recovery and be like, oh my gosh, like I thought I was a unique crisis.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden here this guy comes in, or this woman comes in rip roaring because they're on fire for it, right? Like I talked about, it's just once you get this thing, you want everyone to have it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like and I've heard this, and I didn't hear it till recently, but like you get survivor's remorse.
That I saw a light shine. I think I see a
It's
light.
like, God, 33 relapses. How did I get this opportunity? You know what I mean?
I've never heard that. That's awesome. Survivor's remorse.
Right, because you get so blessed. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it's a God of my understanding, really, that I was able to put in place, and I can see that it's grace, like every single day, to this obsession that you have. You know what I mean? This disease of instant gratification, where everything I want, when I want, how I want. Like, how do you get relieved of that?
Yeah.
And I don't know anything else. Like, I knew God through faith, right? But luckily, like, what the program is for me is it's not just religious, it's not just moral or philosophical, but also medical and spiritual. You know what I mean? And so it's the all-encompassing. And I think that's what I was missing. I'm such a person who, like, I go all in on anything that I want.
Yeah.
But it takes a whole entire village of ideas and beliefs to be set in place. And I think that's what the grace is, right? So we have these ideas that come into our peripherals, mixed with this, like, gift of desperation, where I want to do something so different, but I have such fear about it, and it's a moment of grace.
Yeah.
All of it coming together.
It's like a breakthrough, I felt, too. There's a breakthrough where the old you, the ego, I call it, wants to hold you back, keep you addicted, keep you escaping. And the new you is your spirit, is God, is out there. It says, come on, let's go this way. And you're at this crossroad, right?
Right.
And we get torn both ways, and then we go back to who we were and end up with a DUI, with another DUI, like in my case.
Okay.
And then your case, 30 relapses. I don't know how many I had. I never really sobered up. I went to sobriety one time for a rehab to try to save my marriage. It wasn't for me, though.
Right.
Like, you know, when you're trying to do it for someone else, did you ever do that in your...
So, like, I was the kind of just, you know, like I said, I mean, where my drinking takes me to is that it's okay to go ahead and go to a strange neighborhood or go to a strange hotel and do some strange things, right? And so I have the fiance at home, but then all of a sudden, like, I get to such a place, and like I said, it just comes back to my childhood, where it's nothing anyone did. It was just my perception of life that I developed early on, that I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right? And it's hard, like, you know, you can have friends and parents and people who really take a vested interest in your life, and when they hear that, they think like, oh my God, what I do wrong, and they don't realize, and I didn't realize until I get this right, that this is just the way I'm born. Like, I'm just born with this alcoholic mind that is constantly craving more, and I just break out into I want more, I want more, I want more, and that could be affection, appreciation, money, drugs, alcohol.
Never enough,
the whole
huh?
thing. It's none of it.
Yeah.
None of it. And the best way I've heard about it, like Las Vegas has this beautiful scene of recovery where they talk about this God-sized hole that we're constantly trying to fill. And really, like, once you actually, it's a God-sized hole, right? So why not fill it with what its name is?
Yeah.
With this spirit. Like, God is so big, too big for one religion or one idea. And that's what's also been a saving grace for it. Like, this God idea that I had, like, it was so small. Like, finite self is trying to make up this God perception that's infinite, and that just doesn't make sense. And then once you let go of what it should look like, taste like, be like, act like, all those things, and you just let it be.
Let go, let God.
God, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because we don't have to be perfect. And there was a song, I'll probably put it on here too, a little clip right now. I'll put that song, it says perfectly imperfect. I'm perfectly imperfect. And it really changed my life a couple years ago. So I was, this makes sense. I don't need to be perfect in life. And I always knew that, but you have to live through it, accept mistakes, right?
Right.
And you had to accept them, because whether it's DUIs, jail, broken relationships, it takes a time to mend, to make amends too. Like step 9, I believe, right? Step 9, make amends to people.
And one of the first ones that I did was, and it kind of ties into your last question, was I had my ex-fiance who I cheated on 58 times.
Wow.
And that's when we stopped counting. Like, I mean, it was just one of those things, like, this shows you how much I had a touch of AA, but clearly I never had gotten chapter to the wives, because
never
it just
opened
says,
up.
Right. And, you know, I was just, it's like on the spot, I was doing a 5th step and just telling her every single thing, and like it was to her detriment.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where when you're sitting there and you're being honest for the first time, but you're being overly honest in the most inappropriate way, and it was just like watching a window pane being smashed with a hammer. I mean, she was just so broken. It was one of those things where, like, for addicts or for alcoholics, like when you go through that, like, that's an image you can't get away, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, that perpetually keeps us out there. And once again, like, this is where God's grace just came into play. She was such an amazing human being that, like, even though I had done that to her, she held my hand. She held my hand through every single rehab. She's like my mom, held my hand through every single rehab, every single 5150, every single doctor's visit. When I got diagnosed with HIV, all the things that ever happened to me health-wise.
Yeah.
And then even finally in 2021, February 2021, when I went down to San Diego to try to commit suicide, like, who drives, almost 100 miles to come see me? Like, my parents and my dad for sure, but she showed up.
Wow.
You know what I mean? You take one of the things that I've done to her.
Yeah.
And most women in the free world would be like, I'm done with you, never talking to you. And like, this woman just kept taking the hits. It was just amazing. One of the most beautiful individuals. And what's beautiful about the process and the program of recovery is that when you make it right inside, people will notice that. You know, your brand becomes synonymous with God, and that means you become synonymous with greatness. Like, you just become synonymous with this beautiful thing inside where people all of a sudden, like, what you had even before the drinking and drugs was this magnetic energy where people want to be around you. They want to come around you.
Yeah. They like the new you.
Right. Like, it's like she trudged through this, like, Revolutionary War, and then now why wouldn't she stick around?
Yeah.
For the good things. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like, anytime that I'm able to share inside the rooms, or even speak with my sponsor, that's some of the most important work that I do is with my sponsor, and the gifts that come with the program. You get to work with sponsees, and then where the program comes to life is your relationships, your occupations, you going out in the world and applying what you learn inside those rooms. You know what I mean? And you just watch your life take off. You know what I mean? Like, to go 5 minutes without a needle or a drink. For me, you know what I mean? I'm bougie. I want an old fashioned and chase it with, shooting methamphetamine. I don't know if you can relate to that, but that's where I'm with it. And today to have gone, 15 months and a few days, without the need to do anything demoralizing, in desperation, or to do those activities again. And now, like, it was just a couple days ago, I'm literally on the phone with that ex who I did all these things to, and we're both happy. Like, she's moved on in her life, and she's met someone, like, she's gone through some real knuckleheads. Yeah. And, like, what's her grace for being a good individual? She's now going to be moving on to a guy who is treating her right.
Right. That's the biggest thing. Happened in my life too. My former wife from high school on, the years that I was with her, it was amazing, but then I messed it up. I drank my way out of it. And now she's back in my life as a great friend, friends with my family. It's wonderful. It's all come back. It's taken 10 years of my sobriety to try to humble myself to do that, to try to bring back and make amends with people, right?
100%.
That's what you've done.
Right, and one thing I'll say too, and I can say a lot.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about the amends portion of it is, it's not just about making things like making things even, right? Like that's what's beautiful about this program is we have this obsession, right, that we want to get even, whether it's a negative or positive. But what the amends process does is we never get even. We get to make things right.
Exactly.
But the cool part about in doing right for other people is like the forgiveness has to start within. We look at, if you work a 12-step program, you kind of look at that amends like, oh my God, it's for them, it's for this, and this is embarrassing if it doesn't go my way. It's like, listen, your biggest enemy, like for me, my biggest enemy, the person who talked the worst to me was myself.
Yeah.
And so I get to go put myself in places where, you know what, I have to let go and let God. Like you said, let go and let God, and where the chips fall. But what I can control, the only two things, and I didn't realize this until I get sober, that I can control are my attitude and my output. That sun may have been coming up for 7 billion years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The cars will always be parked here in Newport Beach. I have zero control if that sun comes up. I have zero controls if the same car's parked when it's supposed to park. What I can control is my attitude, how something makes me feel, and my output, what I'm going to do moving forward. Only one thing that can react to a situation is me. Yeah.
And what I say too is like 10 years ago at this point, I got my 4th DUI in a 10-year period. And I was in jail on October 10th. It'll be my 10-10. I'll be 10 years.
Wow.
But what I did was what I did was I chose to stay in jail that time. I could have bailed out for $250. I could have said, I can do it, but I knew I was going to drink if I went out. So I stayed in there, and then they ran my record, and they go, oh, you're not getting out. And I couldn't, and then it went to $70,000. So I was stuck, but I said, thank you. And I said, turn my FUs to thank yous. That's what this is right
Straight up,
here.
that's so good.
So part of it is being thankful that we have to experience this. I wasn't mad at God anymore. I wasn't mad. I put myself here. I heard so many excuses in jail, and you probably heard the same thing. Everybody's blaming everybody else.
Yeah.
They blame their ex, they blame this. And did you feel that way in your time, during the time period when you were using a lot? Were you blaming other people all the time?
Oh my God! Not only that, but like here I am, right? I'm full blown. I'm drinking. I'm working at a bar. It's like giving an axe murderer an axe. You know what I mean?
God.
But on top of that, like then I'm drinking during the shift and everything, and I'm getting resentful at her because I'll go around calling her an alcoholic, him a drug addict, her, everyone, right?
Pointing fingers
but
elsewhere.
God forbid, like the 1 degree of separation that points back to me, like you're not acknowledging that. Like I'm the kind of guy like you would drink too if she drinks this way, it was just so, what's the right word? It's so obsessive over me. Like I think that's the one thing I was really suffocating myself with, was me.
You're your worst enemy, but then we would point fingers out and say, look at that person's worse than me. That person's worse than me. And then try to make ourselves feel better so we can drink, so we can use, so we can keep doing it. It's really weird. It's a back and forth mentality of the ego. Edging God out is what Wayne Dyer taught me, the ego. So
I love Wayne Dyer.
I love him too. He changed my life, by the way. For 3 years before I was sober, I listened to him. And I saw him 3 times before he died. He was the magnificent one that changed my life. And, God, of course, but Wayne Dyer, meetings, everything. I was just like, I don't need to drink anymore. There is life after alcohol, life after drugs, right?
Right.
There's a new life, and you've been born again.
It feels good, and I'll say this too, like kind of with that Wayne Dwyer, like my partner Jeff has opened up my eyes to, and if you guys check it out, it's on YouTube, it's Abraham Hicks.
Oh yeah.
All about vibrational energy, you're up and down, and it's a lot like our addiction, right? So if I'm giving out negative, it's like everyone else is just, they're sitting there with me, but I'm giving out these negative energies. What do you think those rings that are coming back to me?
Right.
It's all negative, therefore, like, what do you think my perception is?
Yeah.
And so, like, when I break it down that way, what it looks like for me is that I'm in control of my mind, and my mind is in control of my reality.
Correct.
Whatever it is that I'm perceiving, and if you give an alcoholic or an addict something to fixate on, we're going to obsess. Mm-hmm. So now, go figure, I'm obsessing over, and I'm the kind of guy that goes into psychosis. Okay. I'm the guy talking to myself out there, doing a noodle groove, you name it, all the things, and so now I think that, the world's awful. And that's all I'm fixating on, is all the problems. Like, now my mind becomes a problem-providing entity.
Yeah.
And so the program of recovery, like you said, there's something you said, and this, I'll shut up and say this. I remember, like, when I was in Vegas, I thought the EMTs were trying to kill me, right? That's where I take it to. Okay. They're literally trying to bring me back to life. I'm in the hospital. My next idea is to jump off the 4th story of a parking structure. Wow. I come down, through a very spiritual experience that God did for me that I could not do for myself. And I remember crying. I got down and I got on the phone with my mom. Here's where the desperation meets the grace, right? God gave me enough strength to get down, had that grace going on for me, had enough clarity. And here was a moment where if I went back inside, I didn't realize that they were going to get me to my rehab.
Okay.
You know, Crossroads of Southern Nevada. And, you know, it only cost me $3,000. Minor, it's not even a blip on the screen considering what I have today, right?
Yeah.
Go down, I get down, and I just remember calling my mom and just saying, hey, you know what, I just remember saying this, and she goes, Brian, you know, come home and do this. And that would have been my 34th time programming here in California. I've done it in San Diego, I've done it in Orange County, I've done it in Long Beach, all the places, right? If I wanted something different, I had to do something different. And my mom, she goes, Brian, come home. I was like, Mom, why am I going to wait another second? Well, Brian, you've said this before. And I said, Mom, that's what I'm saying. I know this is what I'm saying, but I need you to watch my feet. Like, I'm telling you today, that's not something that Brian Pineda was saying in that moment, because I was frightened of the people in Las Vegas because of who I hang out with. I was severely damaged upstairs, but I didn't know what to do. I just knew I didn't want what I had, didn't know what I needed. And I swear God is working through me in that moment just to be like, just trust the process right here. Stay in Las Vegas, right? Because I think there's a part of it that was like, if you go back to California, it's just a matter of days. Because I know I've just been everywhere out here, from mansions to trap houses. Okay. You know what I mean? That's a story in itself. So every place is familiar.
Sounds like a good book name, by the way. From mansion to trap houses. Why don't you write your story about that?
And so, and I did, and that was, it's like what you talked about. It's like that jail thing, right? All of a sudden, there was just something that told me, like, this is where I need to be. Like, be where your feet are.
Yeah. Be thankful for that moment of now. And I say NOW is now, own, one. Stands for different acronyms. Own the moment of now, and you've won the moment of life. NOW. So that made me think of that in jail, waking up saying, thank you, I need to be here. And then this guy came in when I was in jail, and I started interviewing people without even knowing I was interviewing. I just want to know, hey, what brought you here? You know, and they, all these excuses about everybody else. This one guy had 3 DUIs in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, dude, he bailed out, and he got a DUI on a boat, and then he got a DUI in a car. He slammed into his garage. He had all these stories.
That's so fire.
And then he said, oh, this is her fault, his fault. He couldn't get out. There was no bail. He was doing prison for 5 years looking at that time, and he was still blaming everybody else. And I said, God, is this me? It was like a mirror image of what I was going to turn into. If I went out there again and kept drinking, I would have been pointing that finger. Remember, one finger pointed out, 3 fingers pointed in from Wayne Dyer. And he said, this, and this. And then he was shipped off to prison. Now, I was only in jail. I never hit prison, but I was like, that's going to be me. That's good shit. I woke up. Right. I said, no more.
You know, there's just one thing that I heard that really made sense to me, and it was Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout. And I think it's, I can't think of his name, Rick Risby, I think is what his name is. And he says that ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity.
Wow. I love that.
Right? I just remember.
That's right on.
And I remember hitting, so I remember sitting in a 5150 at UCI, and I'm literally putting on motivational videos with my mom, you know, and of course I'm judging myself out there, right? There's a girl who's kicking the orange down the hallway. You've got a 230-pound linebacker, transgender who comes in there and like takes 6 guards, and you almost knock the wall down.
Jeez.
And I'm sitting there, and of course I've had a couple hours to kind of come down, and I'm just immediately like, what am I doing in here?
Yeah.
Like, I don't belong here, right? Just judging myself out of exactly where I need to be, to have some clarity on my situation. Like, regardless of what their situation is, Brian, how about the fact is, the doctors, like the state of California, has taken a vested interest in you to change something about yourself. Like, you're in a 3-day 5150 lockup. Chances are, with someone without a PhD, Brian Pineda, that thinks that you shouldn't be here, but people with a PhD think that you need 3 days here, chances are you probably need it.
You gotta listen to them.
You know what I mean?
You're not going anywhere, at least for 72 hours.
Yeah. And so what I did was I started listening to, because I knew this was like a trap zone up here, so I started listening to motivational videos. And when he said that to me, I was like, holy cow. That wasn't the turnaround point.
Yeah.
That was 2019, I think, so I still had a couple more years before.
I always say the seed was planted, right?
Yes.
The seed was planted. And even if you fall back out, you kept learning from that, right?
Right. And I think this will probably be the last thing that I really have to say on this, because I know it's been like, 100,000 words. One thing that I've learned, and the cool thing is I'm just a walking plagiarism, right? Everything I've heard, thank God, is not from like Brian Pineda. It's all things I've picked up along the way because I was seeking. I was seeking the information, and there's a woman who said this. You know, she was a woman she's a multi-millionaire CEO now, but literally was at a point where she was supporting her child and she didn't have enough food, either rent or food for the child. And that was her gift of desperation, right? We all could use a gift of desperation, not just from drinking or drugs, but just like where we're at in the world today, where we're at with our inner peace. And she said this to me, and it rang true, and I heard this one in sobriety. I loved it. She says, conveniency and conviction do not live on the same block. Like, it is not convenient to find conviction in your life, right? Success will leave clues along the way, but it's not convenient to follow those clues, right? It's going to take some sacrifice. I think it was Mark Cuban who sold his company for a few $1 million, but he still for 3 years ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? Just because he had touched a little bit of success, it was like, well, why not keep going? That's kind of how sobriety is. Like, if I get this success, like, what did I do today to not drink and use? Because that's the miracle, right?
Yeah.
I heard another gentleman say, you know, there's a lot of guys that come in these rooms that get a lot of years, but they don't get enough days. And that rang true about a guy that went in a different meeting who at 19 years, 51 weeks, put a shotgun in his mouth. Right? So if we focus and we think like, oh, we got this thing, or we don't realize like the gift and what we did today, like sometimes it could be a blessing or a lesson, right? It could be like today was miserable. Get with someone that speaks your language and find out like, what did you do though? Like to persevere yourself, right? The world's going to be the way it's going to be.
How can I learn? How can I grow?
Right. You know, the world's not going to change, but if the people do, then the world can. You know what I mean? So like the change has to come from
May the
here.
grace of God
What
be
did I
with you
do to
always
stay
in your
sober?
heart. May I know the
And then
truth
that
inside
became
you
my
from the start. May I
conviction.
find the strength to know you are a part of something beautiful. And I thought that I saw a light shine. I think I see a light shine. So I thought that I saw a light shine. I think I see a light shine now. Yes, I thought that I saw a light shine. I think I see a light shine. And I thought that I saw a light shine. I think I see a light shine now.